Hey, what's up guys? This is me, Nisi of Spoil Me Nisi, back with another video. I hope you're all doing very well on this Mother's Day weekend. It's been a very rainy Saturday here in the Northeast, but the sun is peeking out behind the clouds there, so that's positive. So I'm starting a new series where I talk about my favorite actors and actresses. Now, just a disclaimer of this series, I don't focus on any of these celebrities' personal lives in any way, or their Twitter situations or any of that jazz. You know, as I've explained in previous videos, I'm actually against all of that, celebrity worship and, being part of their lives and all that stuff. I don't like any of that. I'm just going to focus on their artwork and the artwork that they were a part of. So I'm starting off this series with Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy happens to be one of my favorite actors. He's played in a lot of my favorite movies, and I think that as an actor, he's been very consistent in all of his movies. He has a lot of range. He can play in a scary movie. He can play in a sad movie. He can play in an action movie. He can play in a romance movie. He definitely has a lot of range in his skills. He certainly has been blessed with a gift to entertain. So we're starting out with him. So Eddie Murphy, a lot of my favorite movies by him came out either in the 80s before I was born or in the 90s when I was just a little peanut. So my favorite movie of all times, whether or not it's an Eddie Murphy movie, like my number one favorite movie is Boomerang, and it just so happens to be an Eddie Murphy movie. Now, this movie came out in 1992, so I was just a little goober at that time. But I'm sure I watched the movie when I was a young kid. My parents, liked it. I watched it with them. And then as I got older, it was just one of my favorite movies. I loved it. I love all the flavor. Eddie Murphy's character in this movie, I think is great. I loved Robin Givens in this movie, Halle Berry in the movie. I think all of them had a lot of chemistry. Well, not together, but like Robin Givens and Eddie Murphy had a lot of chemistry, and Halle Berry and Eddie Murphy had a lot of chemistry as well. Out of all of Eddie Murphy's movies, I think this was the first movie that I've seen of his where he had an actual intimate scene or sex scene. Even the sex scene was funny, honestly. The whole movie is just hilarious. I can watch this movie today in 2021 and it's just as funny to me now as it was years ago. I love the fashion in this movie, just everything about it. Whenever I watch this movie, I'm like, gosh, I wish I was born earlier so that I could be at least a teenager in the 90s to just really enjoy it. But yeah, aside from all of that, Boomerang is certainly one of my favorite movies, and I think that Eddie Murphy killed it in this movie. Another one of my favorite movies of all time by Eddie Murphy is Beverly Hills Cop 1. I like all three of the movies in the trilogy. If you haven't seen Beverly Hills Cop before, it's currently being played on HBO Max, all three of the movies. And if you have seen it before, but you haven't seen it in a while, definitely go to HBO Max and get a good laugh because Beverly Hills Cop is hilarious, all three of them. But out of all three of the movies, the first one, in my opinion, is the funniest. It definitely had, suggestive jokes in the movie. When I watch Beverly Hills Cop, I'm like, yikes, a person can't make some of the jokes that they had in the script today, otherwise they'd be an uproar. And I love movies like that. They definitely give off that nostalgic feel, and it's certainly an escape from the world we have today. So Beverly Hills Cop is also in my top faves of Eddie Murphy. Now, out of all three of them, is Beverly Hills Cop 2, my favorite? No, my favorite of the three is the first one. And then after that, my second favorite is a toss up between the second and the third one. But all in all, I do think that all three Beverly Hills Cop movies, are hilarious. And that doesn't always happen. When you watch other trilogy movies, usually they die out as far as like them being good by like the second or third movie. But I think he was very consistent in all three movies. So yeah, these are definitely in my faves. Another favorite of mine by Eddie Murphy is Coming to America. And this is a favorite of all time here. Of not even just Eddie Murphy movies, but just my favorite movies of all time. Coming to America is certainly a classic. I did a video about the second one that came out this year. I did a video on that one if you go back in my videos. I think Coming to America was such a classic that it was dang near impossible to redo it, because it was really good. Coming to America came out, I believe, the year that I was born. And it certainly had like that nice like 80s flavor to it. And most of my favorite movies have come out in like the 80s and 90s. So, I just, love that whole, 80s, 90s flavor and all that. And you definitely get that in Coming to America. I think it was very funny. So yeah, that's one of my faves. Another one of my favorite movies by Eddie Murphy is The Nutty Professor. Now, speaking of trilogies that kind of died out by the second or third movie, I do believe that the Nutty Professor movies did kind of die out, with the second or third one. While I do think all three of them are good watches and all three of them are funny, the second and third Nutty Professor movie was certainly not as funny as the first one. So the first Nutty Professor definitely is a favorite of mine. Now, I love this movie because Eddie Murphy was the first actor that I can think of that played two characters, at the same time in a movie. So that was my first time seeing that. Now, I'm not a big fan of men dressing up as women. So like him dressing up as like his mom and grandmother, I'm not a big fan of that, but he did it like in a very genius way. He's one person and he played a whole family of people and Buddy Love. It's hilarious. And also I like that Jada Pinkett was in the movie as well. She is also someone that's in quite a few of my favorite movies from the 90s also. So she did add a little bit of her, flavor to Nutty Professor also. The other Nutty Professor movies, I did like them. Like I liked the one with Janet Jackson. But I don't know. I wish that Jada Pinkett would have stuck with all three of the movies. And then finally, one of my favorite movies is Vampire in Brooklyn. I think this movie is very underrated. Like whenever you hear people talk about classics, you don't really hear them bring up Vampire in Brooklyn. This movie is genius. Like Vampire in Brooklyn was scary. It was actually scary, but it was funny. It's like when you watch the movie, you don't know if it's a comedy or if it's a horror movie. And I'm not a big fan of horror movies, but Vampire in Brooklyn, I do feel like it's funny, but it's also scary at the same time. Now, these aren't my only favorite Eddie Murphy movies. Like he has a ton more, like Norbit and Harlem Nights, and 1,000 Words. I don't know. It's just so many of them. I've never seen Mr. Church, but that is something that I have to get into. I even like the Dr. Dolittle movies and Pluto Nash. That was like Bowfinger. Like he's had so many movies that are good, and it was just not enough time in a video for me to like show all of them. So these are just like my faves, but I do like all of his other movies as well, except for the next two that I'm going to mention. So out of all of Eddie Murphy's movies, he only has two movies that I'm not really a big fan of. The first one you're probably gonna say, come again, but I don't care. It's how I feel. The movie Life. I really don't like this movie. I think it's depressing. I think that the whole experience of the movie Life is traumatic. Like the abuse that each one of them receive, like just everything that comes with that movie. Like I feel like when I watched the movie Life when I was younger, I thought it was funny, but now watching it as an adult, all the laughs in the world can't take away from the traumatic experience of even watching this movie. I think it's really sad. I don't know. I'm just not a real fan of Life. Definitely not one of my favorite movies by Eddie Murphy or favorite movies in general. Funny, but sad and just real messed up. And then my least favorite movie of his was Dolomite, or Dolomite Is My Name. Didn't like it. It came out on Netflix recently. Wasn't funny at all. I don't know. I certainly was surprised that this was an Eddie Murphy movie. But hey, it doesn't take away from his talents. You know, he certainly is a talented man. So yeah, Eddie Murphy is definitely one of my favorite one of my favorite actors, as I've described. One thing is, I love these older movies, and I do think that Eddie Murphy is one of those people that was blessed with the ability to make people laugh. I think that laughter is very important. Life is like super serious, and any person that can make people laugh, and entertain them, I feel is blessed with that gift to be able to do that, because it makes people feel good. So anything that you could do that's positive and doesn't have any evil or bad undertones to it, you could just make people simply laugh. I do think it's a blessing to be able to to do that for people, and I think that Eddie Murphy has had people laughing for decades. I can't wait to see his next movies that he comes out with. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video on Eddie Murphy. So yeah, this is a new series that I have starting on my channel, and I'm going to be talking about all of my favorite actors and actresses. So I do have like a broad range of movies that I consider my favorite, but all of those movies don't include people that I consider my faves. So what makes a person my favorite actor or actress is an individual that played in at least 5 movies that I would consider to be classics. Like nowadays, a lot of these new actors and actresses, they'll play in a couple of good movies, but just because a movie is good doesn't make it an actual classic. So my favorites would be like, a Halle Berry or a Denzel Washington or a Will Smith, and a few others. So there's certainly more to come for that. In the next couple of days, I'll drop my next fave video. So until then, I hope that you guys have a very good Mother's Day and you all stay safe. And I'll be making another video in the next couple of days, God willing. So in the meantime, peace.